I never thought I'd be the guy writing about this kind of mess, but here we are. My name's Dave, and I've been with Sarah for about 5 years now. We got married 3 of those years ago, and on paper everything seemed fine. She was successful, confident, and kind of bitchy in that sassy way I used to think was sexy. She was a lawyer, always busy, always on her phone, but I figured that's just how women in her position are: busy, stressed, always chasing deadlines. I never really doubted her intentions or her faithfulness, at least not until the last few months. At first, it was just little things. She started coming home later than usual, sometimes claiming working late, but she'd be vague about what she was doing. She'd get defensive if I asked, roll her eyes, and brush it off like I was overreacting. I let it go because I thought maybe she was just stressed, or maybe she needed some extra time at the office. She'd say I was paranoid, that she loved me, that I should trust her. And I wanted to trust her, I really did. I told myself maybe I was just being insecure, maybe I was imagining things. But then, the strange texts started appearing on her phone, short, flirtatious, sometimes explicit. I'd catch her glancing at her messages and quickly hiding the screen if I looked over. That's when I started noticing how much she was lying about where she was staying sometimes. It was around our anniversary that everything finally snapped. She'd been acting weird for weeks, secretive, sneaky, always on her phone late at night, and suddenly she was avoiding me more than usual. I decided to check her phone, something I normally wouldn't do, but I just had this gut feeling. I figured maybe I'd catch her in a lie, or even better, see something incriminating. And I did. I found a string of messages with her boss, Mark. The messages weren't just professional. They were flirtatious, loaded with inside jokes, and there were some pretty explicit exchanges. I couldn't believe it at first. I mean, I knew Sarah was attractive, but cheating. That was a new level of betrayal I wasn't prepared for. I was sitting in our living room about to leave for dinner when I saw her slip her phone out of her purse and text. I caught her eye and asked her what she was doing. She froze for a second, then just shrugged and said, "Nothing." But I'd already seen enough. I saw the messages, how she was telling Mark she missed him, how she wanted to see him again, how she was tired of pretending with me. That's when everything hit me like a freight train. All those late nights, all those work emergencies, all those little excuses she'd given me suddenly felt hollow. She'd been lying to my face, hiding a whole secret life. That night I stayed up, staring at her phone, trying to process what I'd just seen. It was like my whole world was crashing down. I kept asking myself how long this had been going on, how many nights she'd been sneaking around with him. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and honestly kind of numb. I'd trusted her more than anyone, and now I felt like I didn't even know who she was. All that time we spent together, all those plans for the future, they just felt like lies now. I was drowning in a flood of anger, sadness, and confusion. I didn't sleep that night, and I knew I had to confront her soon. I just didn't know what I was going to say or how I was going to handle it. All I knew was I wasn't going to let her get away with this, not without a fight. The next morning I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. Everything was heavy: my head, my chest, my stomach. I couldn't focus on anything except that damn phone and what I'd seen. I knew I had to confront her, but I kept putting it off, not because I was scared, but because I didn't want to believe it was real. I kept telling myself maybe I misunderstood, maybe it was just harmless banter, maybe I was overthinking. But deep down I knew the truth, and it was worse than I could have ever imagined. Sarah was already up, acting normal, too normal actually. She was making coffee, humming some stupid tune, pretending like everything was fine. I sat on the couch trying to act casual, but inside I was boiling. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Sarah, I need to talk to you, now." She froze, her face twitching like she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't. She looked annoyed, like I was ruining her day. "What is it, Dave? Can a woman have her coffee first?" "No," I snapped. "We need to talk about those messages, the ones from Mark. The ones where you're telling him you miss him, that you want to see him. What the hell is going on?" Her eyes narrowed and she rolled her eyes. "Seriously, you're overreacting. It's just work stuff, okay? Maybe you're paranoid. Maybe you're jealous. It's just sex talk. Relax." I couldn't believe how she was brushing it off like I was some crazy guy inventing stories. "Sex talk? You're seriously telling me that you're just exchanging flirtatious messages with your boss, that you're just joking around about how much you want to see him?" She crossed her arms, still with that bitchy smirk. "Look, Dave, I don't owe you an explanation about every little message I send. Mark's just a friend, okay? We've got a thing going on that you don't understand. I've told you I'm busy, I work late sometimes. You're just jealous because I'm successful and you're insecure." That was the moment I realized I was dealing with someone who was completely unrepentant, who was good at lying and twisting everything around. I felt my blood boil. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand she tell me the truth. But I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere. I just looked at her, feeling like I was losing my mind. I told her, "I saw the messages. I know you've been lying to me for months. How long has this been going on? Since when?" She blinked, then shrugged like she didn't care. "Since forever, I guess. I don't owe you an explanation about my life. I'm not a fucking prisoner here. If I want to talk to Mark, I will. And if you don't like it, that's your problem, not mine." That's when I saw the true face of a woman who just didn't give a damn anymore. I felt betrayed, angry, and sick all at once. It was like she just dismissed everything I believed in. I was so furious that I almost lost control, but I also knew I couldn't just blow up without thinking. I had to decide what to do next. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when my world was falling apart. That day, I realized I was staring at a woman who had no remorse, no shame. She'd lied so many times I wasn't sure what part of her was real anymore. So I sat there, silence filling the room, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't want to cry, didn't want to break down. All I wanted was to understand how someone I loved could do this, to me, to us. But I also knew I couldn't stay in that house forever, pretending everything was okay. I needed to think. I needed to decide whether I was going to fight for this marriage or walk away. Because at that moment I realized the woman I thought I knew was gone, and I was left alone to pick up the pieces of my shattered trust. After that confrontation, I didn't sleep much that night. I kept replaying everything in my head, the sneaky messages, her cold attitude, the way she just shrugged off all my questions like I was bothering her. I guess part of me hoped she'd somehow admit she was wrong, that she'd feel guilty and beg me to forgive her. But that didn't happen. Instead, she kept insisting it was just sex talk, that she was tired of me accusing her of stuff, and that I was just insecure. Honestly, hearing her say that hurt more than the betrayal itself. The next morning, I decided I needed a plan. I couldn't keep going like this, living in this weird limbo where I didn't trust her but also didn't want to lose her. I started gathering evidence, screenshots of the messages, her call logs, everything I could. I knew I had to be careful. I didn't want her to catch on or she'd probably destroy everything. I also started paying more attention to her habits, who she was texting, where she was going, her mood shifts. It was like suddenly everything was in high definition, and I couldn't turn it off. Throughout that day, she kept acting like nothing had changed. She was bitchy, snapping at me if I asked about her plans. She threw her weight around, acting like she was the queen of the house. She kept insisting she was doing nothing wrong, that I was just jealous and insecure, and that I needed to lighten up, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I could see through her bullshit. I'd seen the messages, I'd seen how she looked at him when she thought I wasn't paying attention. It was obvious she was hiding something big, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. That night, I decided I'd had enough. I couldn't keep pretending to be okay with her lying every day. I needed her to admit everything, or I'd be the one to do it for her. I waited until she was in the bedroom, half dozing on her phone, probably texting Mark again. I sat down on the bed, looked her straight in the eye, and said, "Sarah, I know everything about the messages, about you and Mark. I want you to tell me the truth now. How long has this been going on? How many nights have you spent with him?" Her eyes widened for a second, then she rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Oh, please, you're obsessed. I don't have to explain myself to you. It's none of your business." I was furious. It is my business when my wife is sneaking around, lying and cheating. On me, I deserve the truth. No more bullshit, Sarah. How long? She hesitated, then looked away. Fine. Yeah, we've been seeing each other for a few months, maybe longer. I don't know, okay? I don't keep track. It's just sex, that's all. You think I love him or something. Get real. I don't do feelings. That was the moment I realized her mask was slipping. She was so quick to dismiss it, so bitter and defensive, that I knew she'd been hiding this for a while. I felt a deep ache in my chest, disappointment, heartbreak, rage. How did I get here? How did I end up married to someone who didn't even respect me enough to tell the truth? I wanted to scream, to shake her, but I stayed calm. Inside, I was breaking. I wanted to grab her by the shoulders and shake her until she saw how much she'd hurt me. Instead, I just told her, "You're dead to me, Sarah. I trusted you, and you threw that in my face." She just looked at me coldly, then said, "Whatever, do what you want. I'm tired of your accusations. I'll leave if you want. But I'm not going to sit here and be your punching bag." That was the last straw. I knew then that whatever hope I had left was gone. I didn't want to fight or scream anymore. I just wanted her out of the house, out of my life, if that's what it came down to. I told her to pack her things and leave. I didn't care if I sounded like an asshole. I was done playing nice. I felt raw, exposed, and utterly betrayed. This wasn't just about the cheating. It was about her lying, her cruelty, her indifference to everything I thought we had. As she packed her bag, I sat on the couch watching her move. I didn't tell her I loved her anymore, didn't try to make her stay. I just felt hollow. I knew I'd be haunted by this, by the images of her and Mark, by the betrayal that cut so deep I didn't see how I'd ever recover. But one thing was clear: this wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a lie, and I was finally waking up to that harsh reality. That night after she left, I was alone in the house for the first time in years. The silence was deafening. Every corner, every piece of furniture seemed to mock me with memories of what used to be. I kept going over everything, wondering how I missed the signs, how I could have been so blind. I'd trusted her completely, and she'd taken that trust and shattered it into a million pieces. It was like I'd been hit by a truck, a mix of shock, anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal I didn't think was possible. I stayed up most of the night, drinking whiskey and trying to piece myself together. My mind kept circling back to the messages, to her cold, indifferent face as she packed her bags. I kept asking myself how someone I loved so much could do this to me, how she could look me in the eyes and lie so effortlessly, so convincingly. I'd always thought I knew her, but now I realized I never really knew her at all. She had secrets, and those secrets had destroyed everything. The next morning, I knew I had to face what was coming. I started going through all our shared stuff, her clothes, her jewelry, the photos from better days. I couldn't believe how much I'd let slide, how much I'd ignored her dismissive attitude, her bitchy comments. I felt like a fool, but I also felt empowered in a strange way. This was the end of that chapter, and I had to accept it. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to decide whether to fight for a marriage that was long gone or to accept that it was over. I called a friend who's been through similar shit, and he told me to take my time. Don't rush into any decisions, but I already knew I wasn't going to chase her. I wasn't going to beg her to stay or try to fix what was broken. I had to think about what I wanted for myself, whether to fight for her or to cut my losses and move on. I sat on the couch, staring at the empty doorway where she'd just been, feeling emptier than I'd ever felt before. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was realizing I'd been living a lie, trusting someone who didn't care enough to be honest with me. Over the next few days, I tried to keep busy. I started cleaning the house, doing things I'd neglected. I realized how much I'd taken for granted. But every time I looked at her side of the closet, her clothes, or the gifts I'd given her, I felt this gnawing pain. Every memory, every moment we shared now felt tainted, stained with her lies. I kept asking myself how long she'd been cheating, how many nights she'd spent with Mark. The thought made me sick, but I couldn't stop it. I wanted to hate her, but part of me still loved her, and that made everything worse. Eventually, I decided I needed closure. I reached out to her once just to hear her voice. I told her I was done, that I was no longer willing to pretend everything was fine. She responded with a snarky text, saying I was overreacting, that she'd move on just fine without me, and that I was pathetic for still caring. That cut deep. It was like she was trying to gaslight me, making me feel guilty for feeling hurt. But I didn't respond. I knew I had to take control, even if it hurt like hell. In the end, I learned a lot about myself. I learned that trust is fragile, and once broken, it's damn hard to repair. I learned that some people will lie, cheat, and manipulate without remorse. And I learned that sometimes, the best thing you can do is walk away before you completely lose yourself. I still feel the pain, but I also feel a strange sense of relief. The weight of her betrayal has lifted at least a little. It's a long road ahead, but I know I'll get through it. And someday, I hope someone honest will come into my life again. After a week or so of trying to pick up the pieces, I realized I couldn't just sit around waiting for her to come back and expect everything to be normal again. That's not how it works when trust is completely shattered. I made a conscious decision to cut all contact with Sarah. No texts, no calls, no stalking her social media, nothing. I needed space to breathe, to figure out what I really wanted, and to stop obsessing over her every move. Meanwhile, I started doing some serious soul searching. I couldn't deny I was angry, hurt, and feeling pretty damn stupid for trusting her so blindly. But I also remembered the good times, the moments I thought we shared, and how she used to be before all the lies. It was a huge wake-up call. I had been in a relationship where I was constantly walking on eggshells, trying to keep her happy, trying to fix her mood. And for what? To get cheated on and lied to. That's not a life I wanted anymore. I realized I deserved someone who respected me, who was honest about her feelings, and who didn't treat me like an afterthought. I decided to finally see a counselor. I needed to talk to someone who wouldn't judge me, someone who could help me process everything. It was a tough step. Honestly, I felt embarrassed at first, like I was weak for admitting I was broken. But it helped. Talking to a professional gave me perspective. I learned that I wasn't at fault for her betrayal, that I couldn't control her actions, and that healing was going to take time. But I also learned that I had to focus on myself for once. I started working out more, eating healthier, and reconnecting with old friends I'd ignored during the chaos. A few weeks passed, and I finally reached a point where I could think clearly about what I wanted going forward. I knew I didn't want to be with Sarah anymore, not after she'd shown me who she really was. I was ready to file for divorce. Part of me felt guilty, like I was giving up, but I also knew staying in a toxic, dishonest marriage wouldn't do me any favors. I had to face the reality that I was better off alone than with someone who didn't value me enough to tell the truth. I had that conversation with her finally, sent her a message that I wanted a divorce. It was straightforward, no anger, just a clear statement. She responded with the usual callous attitude, mocking, dismissive, like she didn't care. That was the moment I realized I'd been right all along. She didn't love me, she just loved the illusion of a perfect life we pretended to have. And now that that was gone, she didn't care what happened. I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Relief because I knew I was finally free from her lies. Sadness because I'd loved her once. And now I was saying goodbye to what once was. Looking back, I've learned that trust is fragile but essential. Once broken, it's a long, painful process to rebuild or to move on. I've also learned that some people will lie and cheat just because they can, and that you've got to protect yourself. My advice to anyone out there who's going through something similar: don't ignore the red flags and don't stay just because you're afraid of being alone. Sometimes, walking away is the bravest thing you can do. And as much as it hurts now, I know I'll come out of this stronger. Time will heal, and someday, I'll find someone who's honest, loyal, and worth all the pain I've been through. Now, here I am, months later, sitting in my empty apartment, finally starting to piece myself back together. The pain hasn't completely gone away, but it's dulled enough that I can breathe without feeling like I'm suffocating. I've learned the hard way that trust is something you earn, and once it's broken, it's damn near impossible to put back together. That's why I don't regret what I did. I'd rather be alone than trapped in a lie. Most days I think about how I was naive, how I let her manipulate me into thinking everything was perfect. I was blinded by love, by hope, and by the idea that people don't really cheat and lie unless they're truly unhappy. But now I see it clearly. Some people are just selfish. They care about themselves and their own pleasure, no matter who they hurt along the way. I used to think I was special, that I was enough for someone. Turns out I was. Not for her, at least. But I've also learned that recovery is possible. It takes time, patience, and a lot of soul searching. I've started dating again cautiously, and I'm trying to remind myself that not everyone is like Sarah. There are genuinely good people out there who value honesty and loyalty. I don't trust easily anymore, but I'm working on rebuilding that part of myself. And I'm finally at peace with walking away from someone who didn't deserve my love in the first place. Looking back, I realize I've grown a lot from this experience. I know now that my worth isn't defined by someone else's lies or betrayal. It's about how I handle my pain, how I learn from my mistakes, and how I move forward. I want to tell anyone reading this who might be going through something similar: trust your instincts. Don't waste your time on someone who doesn't respect you or who lies to your face. Believe in yourself enough to walk away before you get completely broken. Because in the end, the only person who truly matters is you, and you deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect. So I've let go of the past and I'm focusing on the future, and honestly, it feels lighter. Like I finally took the first step toward healing. I know the scars will stay with me, but they don't define me. I'm still here, still standing and stronger than I was yesterday. That's all I can ask for.